When I first saw it, I thought it was a U.S. made, very advanced next-generation fighter, the sort of machine that might explain a lot of UFO sightings. Only later did I learn that wasn't the case. What we are looking at is scarcely bigger than a basketball, yet its behavior forced a complete rethink. When Bob Lazar described an impossible alien reactor in 1989, the world laughed. 36 years later, a mysterious sphere crashed in Colombia, and suddenly nobody was laughing anymore. There was no AI fakery, no trickery that could explain what people actually saw. The sphere was truly flying, truly levitating, and then it finally came down. The scene in March 2025 in the small town of Buga, Colombia, reads like something out of a science fiction thriller. Residents watched a smooth metallic sphere zigzag through the sky in ways that made no sense, stopping midair, changing direction instantly, and then plummeting to Earth with a thud that shook the ground. David Vez, metal detecting in a field, stumbled upon the object sitting in a perfect circle of dead grass. It looked about the size of a basketball, but behaved unlike anything anyone had encountered. When Vez tried to lift it, it felt completely wrong. Light, almost toy-like, weighing only 4 to 5 pounds, lighter than a bag of sugar. Within weeks of recovery, however, scientists reported the sphere's mass had changed. The same object now weighed 22 pounds, a change that should be impossible by ordinary physics. Mexico's National Autonomous University ran test after test, and what they found broke the rules of everything we thought we knew. The sphere could somehow reduce its own effective weight by exactly 81%. But the weight changes were only the beginning. Wherever the sphere had been, it left a perfect circle of destruction. Soil drained of moisture, plants instantly dead, and months later nothing growing in that spot. It was as if the ground had been sterilized by an unknown force. The precision of these effects, the way the object manipulated its own weight, and the environmental damage it left behind all pointed away from mundane explanations like space junk or satellite debris. The evidence suggested technology far beyond human capability. That's where the eerie parallels with Bob Lazar's claims become relevant. In 1989, Lazar said he worked at a secret facility called S4 near Area 51, reverse engineering alien spacecraft. He described 9 different craft, and crucially, a reactor roughly 18 inches in diameter containing a central chip of element 115, surrounded by smaller spherical components, all housed inside a seamless dome with no visible seams or joints. Lazar claimed this reactor manipulated gravity waves, allowing massive objects to move as if almost massless. At the time, element 115 had not been observed in nature, and his claims were dismissed as fantasy. But over the years, some of his peripheral descriptions, like Area 51's layout and security, proved more accurate than skeptics expected. In 2003, laboratories produced fleeting atoms of element 115, now known as moscovium. But that is miles away from Lazar's story of stable macroscopic material powering reactors. When scientists began detailed examination of the Buga Sphere, the similarities to Lazar's reactor were unnervingly specific. The sphere's diameter, about 20 inches, was close to Lazar's description. X-ray and imaging studies revealed a seamless construction with no seams, rivets, or welds. The object appeared grown rather than assembled. Inside, researchers found a central nucleus surrounded by 16 to 18 smaller spheres arranged in a precise geometric pattern, and a network of roughly 52 fine filaments running through 3 concentric layers of internal architecture. That interior arrangement echoed Lazar's description of a central element surrounded by spherical components, and suggested an internal system far more complex than ordinary electronics. While Lazar hadn't mentioned fiber optics by name, the sphere's filaments resembled light-channeling structures that might behave very differently from our familiar wires and circuit boards. Perhaps the single most disquieting feature was the sphere's apparent ability to manipulate gravity or effective mass. Lazar described propulsion based on gravity wave amplification that could reduce mass and inertia. The Buga Sphere demonstrated a repeatable reduction of its weight by 81% through an unknown mechanism. If confirmed, such behavior flouts Newtonian intuition. Mass isn't supposed to change just by sitting in a field. Some researchers hypothesize the creation of localized gravitational distortions, a bubble that alters how the object couples to Earth's gravity, but that remains speculative. Other anomalies compounded the puzzle. The sphere's surface seemed to actively heal microscopic scratches over time, reorganizing at the atomic level to maintain an almost unnaturally perfect finish. Every conventional cutting tool, diamond saws, lasers, plasma torches, failed to make a mark. The materials analysis added another layer of the uncanny. Spectrographic work revealed isotopic ratios unlike anything typically found on Earth. Some ratios hinted at matter processed in exotic ways. When researchers ran the isotopic pattern through pattern recognition algorithms, what initially looked like noise resolved into something deliberate. A mathematical sequence, specifically prime numbers, encoded into the isotopic distribution. That pattern, when decoded further, produced coordinates, not for places on Earth but relative positions in space. Those coordinates pointed to a region about 37 light-years away toward the constellation Reticulum, a direction associated in popular lore with the Zeta Reticuli system, the very starfield Lazar had named decades earlier. If the isotopic encoding and coordinate interpretation are correct, the coincidence is striking to the point of being essentially impossible. Someone, or something, would have had to deliberately imprint a mathematical message into the fabric of the material, manipulating neutrons and isotopes at an atomic level to carry information. That suggests either a technological capability centuries, beyond ours, or intelligence that thinks in ways we do not yet comprehend. Dr. Gary Nolan of Stanford, after examining the sphere, admitted he was 99% convinced it was human-made, but could not explain the seamlessness, the fiber network, or the weight manipulation. Other experts remain skeptical. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, and the provenance and chain of custody of physical samples, the rigor of analysis, and the reproducibility of measurements will define how the broader scientific community reacts. The internal filaments deserve separate attention because they open plausible technical hypotheses without invoking the paranormal. They aren't ordinary fiber optics. Their material properties seem alien to our catalogs. Some researchers suggest they could be conduits for quantum-based communication, entangled photon channels that transmit information instantaneously in ways that classical systems cannot. Laboratories in China and the United States have demonstrated primitive quantum communications, but scaling that to robust, noisy, macroscopic networks integrated into a miniaturized probe would be an enormous leap. The filaments in the sphere are arranged to connect the central core to the surrounding microspheres in a pattern that implies sophisticated sensing and processing, which would make sense for a probe designed to monitor an environment. Light-based processing generates minimal electromagnetic interference and could plausibly work in concert with delicate gravitational manipulation systems.